the SEMIC conference of 2025. The meeting is being recorded. I see the notification, so bear that in mind. We will record this meeting. And these are the communication channels that we are using for this standardization track. So online meetings, except for the physical meeting for the SEMIC conference. The others are all online. We have the core discussions that are documented in GitHub issues. The link you can find here, but we will share them in the chat as well. And on the Matrix channel, you can find us as well for chatting and discussions on there as well. If you want to know more or follow up on the working sessions, you can leave your email address in the chat. That way we can reach you quickly and you'll be involved in any other events or interesting topics around LDES. The agenda for today. So the welcome we had, we'll do a quick tour de table, just as last time. And then we'll dive into the reminder we remind you of the process and the goals, and then the overall rewrite as the basis. We'll explain the basis of the client algorithm and clarifications for LDES, and then we go into the transactions and revisiting the retention policies. Next, I think it's the tour de table. I'll have a look at the participants list here and go one by one. Emil, you're the first one here.
So hello all, I'm Emil. I'm part of the SEMIC team, also a bit active on LDES and on other SEMIC specifications as well.
Voilà, Farouk.
I'm also part of the SEMIC team, and I'm supporting Isabeau and Emil in the LDES stream.
Peter Kolpaert.
Hi everyone, I'm a researcher at Ghent University working on linked data event streams. Surprise, surprise.
Then we have Sander.
I'm Sander. I'm part of the SEMIC team, well, I have a bit of history on implementing LDES in the past.
Voilà, and then I'll jump to Anastasia Sofu. Then we have the full SEMIC team handled, covered.
Yeah, hello again from me. So, yes, no more to say. I'm part of the SEMIC team. I'm following LDES. So, let's proceed with our with today's objective. That's the standardization. Thank you.
Anna Baptista.
Hello, I work at University of Minho. I'm a professor at University of Minho, Portugal.
Okay. Antoine.
Hello, my name is Antoine Isaac. I work at the European App Foundation, interested in following this LDES spec update because we also looking at LDES for possible implementation in the cultural heritage sector.
Great. Arnes Tabano. We are unable to hear you.
Unmute? Mute?
Ah,
can you hear me now?
Yeah,
sorry.
Perfect.
Wrong signal from the button. Okay, my name is Arne, you said it. I work for the National Technical University of Athens. I try to use LDES to synchronize cultural heritage data between us and Europeana.
All right, thank you. Arthur Verkruijsen.
Hello, I'm also a researcher at Ghent University and the team of Peter Kolpaert.
Thank you. Brecht van de Veveren.
I'm working for the company Sirius and implementing LDES in various cities in Belgium.
Daan Zwanepoel.
Hello everyone, I'm Dan. I'm product manager for the Flemish government, and Stephanie is here also. We are both product managers, and we work with LDES in our products.
Okay, thank you. We have Adam Arndt.
Hi everyone, I'm Adam from the Danish Agency for Digital Government.
Great. Pavlina. Then we move to Pavlik. Elf.
Hi, Elf Pavlik, independent, as well as culture of W3C Solid Community Group. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jitse.
Yeah, Jitse, also part of the SEMIC team.
Yeah, also part of the SEMIC team. Julian Rojas.
Hi, I'm also a researcher from Ghent University working on LDES.
Great. Kyle Kramer.
Hey, I'm Kyle. I'm with Red Pencil, where we use LDES extensively at the Flemish government, currently with the team of Dan and Stephanie, who you've met earlier.
Great. Then we have Mantas.
Hi, I'm from Lithuanian Stage Digital Solution Agency and working on an agent who will produce universal API for all Lithuanian datasets, and we are looking into LDES for possible implementation and support.
Okay, interesting. Nuno Freire.
Hello everyone, so I'm Nuno Freire. I am a researcher at Europeana, so I'm working with Antoine and Arne on implementing LDES in cultural heritage. Thank you.
Great. And then last one, Ranko Orlic.
Hi, so I'm Ranko, and I'm a former VSDS team member working at Digital Flanders, and I'm currently working for a European project for Digital Flanders, where we're looking into certification of TREE and LDES in the future, of course.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Sounds very interesting. Glad to have you here. And I would suggest we dive into it, Peter.
Yes, I'm excited. The first time we may during one of the meetings actually change something in the spec. So yeah, it can always, like at the start of this meeting, everything is possible, and at the end of the meeting, time ran out, and probably you've done certain things that you wanted to do, and other things require a lot more discussion. So I've prepared a lot, and I'm really eager to find out how far we will get into discussing all of this, and see where we get into merging things in the actual spec. So maybe at the end of today, we'll already have a new basis to start from that we can publish. Let's see. Okay, so the 2025 trajectory, just a small recap. So the specification today, we call it a living document, a living standard. It's a vocabulary with terms at this moment. These terms have usage nodes for producers, both producers and consumers. And so far, there has not been a real promise to keep the spec stable. There has not been a formal standardization track on it. The only thing that has happened was there were pilots. There were some vocabulary terms that were discussed among people, but not really. The technical standard has not really received any standardization effort yet. So that's why we're here today. There are 30 issues open on the repository, and there was also a starting note prepared in 2024 by Flanders, and then the European Commission decided to hire the person in Flanders who was responsible for creating that document. So Sander now shifted jobs towards over here, so we can use his knowledge on that note to the fullest potential, I think, as well. And our goal is, of course, to try to limit this number of issues, to try to get it down to a very low amount of issues, so that we actually created consensus on all these things. So the ambition of this trajectory is, on the one hand, to have a consumer-oriented, backwards-compatible stable release that is that this way becomes more testable. And this is one this is the URL that you already know for the LDES specification. A second thing that we want to do is add, and this link doesn't work yet because it's the subject of workshop 3 that we're only going to have in July. But to also have a server primer that doesn't contain really normative things anymore, but contains best practices for the server, that the server developers can understand that, if we do things like this, clients will understand it this way and will actually work very efficiently with our server. Good. There's a small note on backwards compatible. We might already break that a little bit today, but maybe for good reasons. So I hope that this is the bit at the last part of the presentation. So I hope we get to it. What we won't have in this trajectory, but something we will be picking up as a community, I think, is that we will be doing implementation reports. So as well at SEMIC, we are doing pilots at the same time on trying to implement LDES for specific cases. You've also seen that quite some people joined today that are working on the use case of cultural heritage, for example, and harvesting towards Europeana. There's also the publication office that's looking at DKTP feeds at this moment to try to get data sets into data.europa.eu. And yeah, in order to have that domain aspect also, or to have documentation specifically for that domain of data sets exchange or for cultural heritage object exchange, then we can actually build specific implementation reports. It's not something we're going to maintain as a specification, but just as a report about, hey, this is how we implemented it for this domain. And if you also want to implement it for this domain, you can get a lot of inspiration from this document. A second thing that we want to do is to have, in the long run, LDES clients compliance reports. So to check the different parts of the specification, of the main LDES specification that's consumer oriented, and to then check to what extent the LDES client is compliant to what is being described in the specification. Good. So in 2025, we're at this moment on the second day. So we had an onboarding session in which we discussed the entire LDES specification as is today. We discussed the good parts and the bad parts as well, and discussed why there were certain requests for clarifications and how it can. What kind of features we can promise towards the future. So today is the first real working group, which means that that today we can take decisions on changing the spec. How will we reach consensus? Well, the idea is that everyone prepares comments on the pull requests before the meeting, and then decisions during the call. There can still be, of course. So we will present the pull requests as they are made, and the decision during the call can then be just accept and merge. So we really then get immediately during the call a new version of the spec that gets published. Or we can get a conditional accept, meaning that, okay, look, the group accepts that this is 90% in the right direction, but for this last 10%, we will still add some or document some conditions. And if these conditions are then met, then we can actually merge the pull request without having to go through another online workshop again. Or a third one can be full reject. We need to start over because this is not going to be the right way forward. These can be the decisions. Yeah, good. And then then we have these three workshops planned, and we have the topics for each of these. The first one is, I think, a really big one, restructuring the spec. So at this moment, we had the spec that was a little bit all over the place. So some text was meant for producers, some text was meant for consumers, and some spec was just introducing vocabulary terms, basically. What we are now going to do is we are still going to have the vocabulary terms in there, but just at the end of the specification. And then in the beginning of the specification, we really need to focus on what does it mean for consumers to do it. And with the term consumer, I mean the actor that will launch an LDES client. So the LDES client is a piece of software that serves to make sure that you can start interpreting the LDES web API as an LDES like that. The consumer will be interested in setting up probably a pipeline that first has the LDES client in there and then has multiple processors behind that to do it. So consumer oriented, it's not only for the clients that we're going to build this spec, it's actually for the full consumer pipeline that we want to give context information as well to that. And something something for which a lot of feature requests were open was this part on extending the retention policies, because certain use cases were not possible today. That's what we're going to do in today's workshop. What are we not going to do in today's workshop is we are not going to standardize the consumer algorithm yet. That's for in 1 month. There will be a pull request again prepared for it, and then 1 week before the workshop there will be a mail sent out saying, look, the pull request is ready, please start preparing your comments for that workshop. And then the third workshop will be about the server primer with these best practices. Good. So the open issues we want to solve today, well, first and foremost, we want to do the consumer-oriented rewrite of the spec. This is the first thing that we're going to go through. This pull request is ready and has received quite some comments, and I also processed these comments. At least I hope you agree that we process these comments correctly. And they also introduce issues that must be solved. Issues that must be solved. That is basically also this reflects the list of issues that we said we would solve over here, or it immediately solves one of these things over here. And then this will be the basis, basically, to then start discussions on all these other things. Important about this consumer perspective, and this is, I think, the last time I'm going to jabber about consumer client and client-oriented things. But the effect of that is that we are not going to talk in terms of must, should, may for the server today. We will only use must, should, may for the client. So it's important that the client must do something, or the consumer somewhere in the pipeline must do something. So we'll disambiguate between the client and the consumer, and we'll also not use must, should, may in this specification for anything producer related or server related. However, this will be then the basis to then in workshop 3 talk with must, should, may for the server, because a must for the server means that the client would break if it wouldn't do that. The client wouldn't be able to do anything meaningful then. A should is a best practice, and is then the client algorithm would then perform actually quite well. And a may is it will then in this way provide useful information for the consumer later in the pipeline. So these are the things that we then will do. Which brings me to the first big thing, the basis for fixing these issues, and that's pull request 71. And this pull request was already opened last week and announced, and that really worked because we got a lot of comments right now. I didn't update my my screenshot over here because at this moment it says conversation 0. But if you actually go to the thing, you will see that we have now conversation 56 and a couple of more commits on the files. So now we actually have quite some feedback that has been processed. I want to show you what the current spec looks like, not by scrolling through the commits, but by but by opening up the spec today, or the spec as proposed in the pull request. And the things that we've done was we've clarified in the abstract that now the specification explains how a client can replicate the history of an event stream and how it can then remain synchronized as new members are published. What we then did was we added an introduction, really that defines that an LDES client is a piece of software used by a consumer, so that we really disambiguate the consumer and the client, and that it then can start from an URL to an entry point in that sense. The client does this by extending upon a subset of W3C3 hypermedia specification, so that it's already clear that somehow we are also going to need to look at the 3 hypermedia specification. The extension is that LDES introduces new terms on it. Yeah, that's that. An issue is added over here that we need to have more details on how HTTP status codes are being processed, how state is kept, and so on. Well, this is as well the topic of next month's workshop. So that's what we're going to prepare, or this issue is of course what we're going to solve. But in order to have the spec at this moment as something that can be published, I propose to have this issue in the spec so that people who read it also know that it is going to be fixed. Good. Then we move towards the overview. There was a comment last week on will we use UML over here instead of just an illustration. Emil promised me that he will open up an issue for that, right? Is it open, Emil?
Yes, it's open.
Yes. Okay. Cool. So we have an issue for that because there's some discussion on the style guide would first want us to use use enterprise architects. I have some problems with that, as I think it's quite difficult that way to accept pull requests from people who don't use enterprise architects or don't have a license like that, and it shouldn't be that necessarily that difficult. I think we can draw UML diagrams with text-based tools and things like that, or draw.io indeed, Mantas. So I think it was also you that suggested it last week, right? We are thinking about for this trajectory maybe experimenting with link ML for the first time, as this is something that is that. And indeed, ELF Mermaid is my preferred tool as well to do that. So yeah, it's still up for discussion, but at least in that GitHub issue, we can now document or thoughts about this issue in more detail, and also SEMIC can then tell us whether that actually aligns with their style guides. So that's I think also an important aspect of this. So if you have more comments like I use Mermaid, I use this, please also put this in the issue that Emil just opened on the spec. Antoine, you have a hand raised?
Yeah, actually, I do have. So thank you, Peter. I do have a general process question. In the pull request, would it be possible to have a link to this viewable version that you're showing now?
Yeah, GitHub does not accept attachments as HTML, but of course I could put this online somewhere and then just link from it. I'll do that for the pull requests of next time.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's not always needed, but for a really big pull request like this one,
yeah,
that would make things easier. I guess there will be smaller pull requests in which the change is just in one part, and that's probably fine to just do with the tracking of the suggested change. Yeah. But this one is a bit hard.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I agree. I will do that. Is someone from the SEMIC team also taking notes of this? Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Emil. Yeah. So that I don't forget actually doing this. Yeah. Good. So then there was some text below it that actually explain what the client expects to find on a root node, for example. So we really introduced the fact that, first, before actually talking about root nodes and search trees and so on, we actually explain this by saying that following the tree specification, this event stream is published using one or more HTTP resources. And when more HTTP resources are used, these pages or tree nodes will be structured according to a search tree. Therefore, we will use the terms root node for the first page and subsequent node for every next page in the structure, and always talk about the fact that it's a search tree that we're talking about. And even if it's just one page, we will still talk about this is the root node of the event stream, because later on it could actually get tree relations to other things. And in the root node, the client will expect these properties to be described on the LDES event stream entity. A timestamp path. I will hold off the full discussions on it at this moment, because I have quite some slides about the timestamp path still in the slide deck. But at this moment, I will say what is said in the pull request. It's a SHACL property path that we will use quite a lot of SHACL property paths that identifies an XSD date time literal within each member. And this timestamp determines the order in which members of the event streams are published. When LDES timestamp path is set, no member can be added to the LDES with a timestamp earlier than the latest published member in that sense. So you cannot have out of order in that sense when timestamp path is set. Then there's a version of path, which is for versioning. It tells you what is a version. There seems to be something missing over here. Okay, so we will need a minor change over here before merging it. Yeah.
I see that Antoine has his hand raised.
Antoine, was this from previous time, or do you still have another?
Yeah, I forgot to. I thought it would automatically be down. Sorry.
Yeah. And indeed, Ranko, it could also be a good idea to just generate a PDF, because actually, I think PDF documents are accepted by GitHub issues. Good idea, Ranko. Yeah. So quickly noting down in the pull request that we have a typo there. There we go. Yeah. Then the shape is a SHACL shape that can be used for selecting a search tree in the discovery phase, as well as to validate the members in the event stream. So yeah, we had a comment by Ranko that indeed over here that this was not clear enough, but I clarified it. So I hope this is much more clear now, Ranko. And then the tree view connects the collection of the current page or points to one specific root node after dereferencing the LDES event stream identifier. There's also a question about what this exactly means. Well, this is really from the tree specification, that it could be that you use tree view to point from an explanation of your tree collection, or from your tree from your LDES event stream. It could be that you say, I only have one view and I link it using the tree view property. Then you still need to actually dereference the view property. But in essence, the client will need to implement the initialization phase in the tree specification. So this will actually be automatically there. Yeah. Then in the root node, the current node identified by the URL of the page will be further described using these properties. It can be using a retention policy or a view description over here to include more information about it. We have a whole discussion still about reworking retention policies. At this moment, I didn't rework a lot of the retention policy spec here. So chapter 2 is the biggest rewrite. From chapter 3, we actually didn't touch a lot because that's reworked in a separate pull request. Then the client must implement the initialization of the tree specification, although it's not required to extract the search form, because in the client algorithm, we won't use the search forms that the tree specification actually uses there. So it also tells now how the client must implement the tree specification, instead of saying it must be a tree client, which is way too broad because it contains much more features than is necessary for an LDES client, for building an LDES client. And then in any tree node, whether it's a root node or subsequent node, the client will expect to find 0 or more members. So members can be put anywhere. And then the LDES client must implement the member extraction algorithm of the tree specification to retrieve a full set of quads of the member. So the member is a set of quads, and what it must extract is actually defined in an algorithm over there. That is also going to be revisited in next week, in fact, in the community group, in order to make it more easy, because at this moment there's quite some additional things that are difficult to implement, and we have a proposal to make it just in time, in fact, also for the LDES table spec, to actually then revisit it for the final time, to have a member extraction algorithm that works there. And then an additional thing that we added is that in an LDES event stream, the object of the tree member triple can only be an IRI, as this IRI will be used in the state to check whether the member has already been emitted or not. So in the tree specification, tree member can also point at the blank node, for example, because that works if you just go across a collection once and just want to find the top K thing. However, in LDES, you want to be certain about completion in some way. So we really need to understand that this tree member can only be an IRI. So this is going to be a limitation as well in the SHACL shapes of our nodes, that the member must be an IRI, or it is not a valid LDES in that sense. That's an addition from the previous specification, in fact. Then we have 2 examples, and there's one example that just says, look, I have an object, and that object is just an observation, and works quite in a straightforward way, just the star shape, the star pattern that's mentioned over here. And over here we have a second example in which we have actually an envelope. So we have some notes about the payload of the member. So we call everything the member, but this is the envelope basically, and this is the payload, you could say, and the payload is added in a named graph in this stage. So yeah, so this is a new thing that we want to see as the default way of handling, or also about recommending how to shield the envelope from the payload, is to always have a named graph used here. Certainly, if you want to version things over here. Good. And then finally, in any tree node, root node, or subsequent node, the client expects to find 0 more relations as well. And these relations contain links to subsequent nodes, and a client must traverse the relations, and that is by looking at the tree chapter on traversing the search tree. So there's this text. So it should iterate over these kind of triples, basically. Good. And then a client must keep its own state to know when to refetch certain tree nodes. And of course, we didn't go into more detail, because this is going to be the issue that we're going to fix next workshop. giving more details on how to traverse the search tree and how to keep state, basically. There's another issue open here for workshop 3 that says that look, this is now the overview of what we expect to see in an LDES. But it would be nice, of course, if we would have official SHACL shapes and if we also would have documentation on the best practices of servers. So we will link from this at the end of this overview. We will link towards the server primer to get more specific to get more specific documentation on how to build a server. Ranko has a comment. If you by default expect named graphs, the possible MIME type for RDF serializations are limited. Just stating the obvious. I don't know what you mean, Ranko. Should we indicate that? Yeah.
Yeah, but that just mean that since we want to have our envelope and our state separated, so you have to use named graphs, which means that you'll have to use 3G or JSON LD or NQuads to as MIME types return. So you cannot return triples. You have to return quads. That's the only point I'm trying to make, which is a limitation. It's not a big one, but it's a limitation. So people have to make sure that they accept these things, because we will not be able to offer them triples.
Yeah. And of course, we set in the spec now an oversight of mine, but I said that the example was turtle, which is of course not true. When we include named graphs, it's trig. Yeah. And Elf, you added a link to a section on serializations, right? Is that something that can be used, or? Yeah. So in RDF 1.1, yeah. So we should indicate that that if we want to have support multiple graphs, we should look at JSON LD, trig, or NQuads, right?
Yes, and effectively, pretty much people use just RDFA and RDF XML, because the other ones is like trig is superset of turtle and quads and triples. So like maybe there are some parsers that don't support the quad formats, but I don't know. I think it's pretty adopted by now.
Yeah. Okay, but I included this, and then I think Nuno had his hand raised, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I also have so it's a different comment about something different, but it also is connected to the serialization format of the RDF.
Okay.
So it is about the note in section 2 about the timestamps, that they must be ordered.
Yeah.
So in most RDF serializations, the order of the triples is not kept. It's not guaranteed that the parser will read the triples in the right order. So if we need to enforce an order, I think we need to restrict to JSON LD.
Yeah, but even in JSON LD, if you parse it on as in the RDF data model, you cannot rely on the order in the JSON LD document. So indeed, we don't mean the ordering in the page, but we mean the ordering in time when they are published. So if you add something to a page, like at T0, you have the state of the page, which contains two members. And then on T1, so in 10 minutes, for example, you actually add another member. Then we say over here that the timestamp path cannot be earlier than the timestamp path of member 2.
Okay, so it's not an order of the elements inside the RDF.
Exactly.
It's just the order of publication.
Yes.
Okay. And new members in this order. Okay. Well, maybe the text could be a bit more clear, but yeah, I see. Yeah, it's okay as you say.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
Thanks for clarifying.
Or we should include a note. Yeah. I'll yeah. Yeah. On the other, yeah, or the yeah, so. Good. Chronological order, yeah, indeed. Good. So I added that as a comment on the spec, basically, or on the pull request. Yeah. Good. And then what did I do? I just kept the retention policies as is, although I added a visualization of the retention policies that can be set today. As I'm going to present later on, I would like to get rid of this because I think it's way too complex, or it's not going to be. It's already pretty complex, and it's also not going to be able to help us reach the use cases that we want to reach. So let's skip over that for now. Then we have the vocabulary, in which we each term that is introduced in LDES actually gets its own small section over here. And then depending on, of course, the UML process that we will decide upon, this might also get automatically generated then from, for example, the link ML description. At this moment, this is the state it looks in, and it's manually written based on every term that's decided. Good. That's the pull request. Are there any more comments about this? Antoine?
Yeah, I think I have a general comment, which is, or I may have a general comment in the future, which is about the let's say the ambition of the pull request in terms of explaining what a linked data event stream is, because I feel it's still very dry in the introduction of what those notions are of events and things like that. And I think it shouldn't be a reason to rework the pull request as it is now, but yeah, I was still curious, and because I wouldn't want to then come with a comment like this at a later stage without having mentioned it now. I believe that what you've done is already good and should be pulled in. If just because the comments I want to make may be made on a more solid ground later on.
Yeah. Well, I would say feel free to open an issue in that sense, and then immediately include some directions towards a solution, like what you would expect. I think sometimes for me it's difficult to understand now after all these years working on LDES to then now see, like, okay, someone who now looks at it for the first time, what is the most important information? So, and I think this is a fresh view that you could bring.
Yeah. Then I will try to provide this, but I think maybe the discussion and that in a way that's related to the target of the specific pull request, because I understand that it's been made to clarify things for clients. And maybe my question would be, actually, is there a place where things would be clarified in absolute? So not necessarily for clients, but also for servers, but not in the specific server fashion that is to be done in the future. So would that still have to be in this specification, or actually is the move towards clients sort of assuming that later on there's going to be a more neutral primer or something like that.
Yeah, so there is going to be a separate server primer, which is planned in workshop 3.
Yeah,
so
this
we're
was
actually
clear.
going to do it. Yeah. So we are actually going to do it.
There is a server primer and this client focus specification. So maybe my question is there some kind of neutral introduction / primer that would be done elsewhere? Because you also don't want to have the general / neutral introduction in the server primer. That would defeat the purpose.
I think it would fit best in this specification. Now, this is the main specification, like the first introduction towards understanding whether it's for you would be over here. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I will keep that in mind then for later comments.
Yeah.
And again, I think this should not be seen as in any way as an objection to merging these pull requests.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah, and there's also my message, like the text that is on here at this moment is a first basis to rework. So that's really what I wanted. That we don't continue working on the old version, the living standard, because it contains a lot of loose ends. But that we start working on a stable basis and now start building it up again, and then making it more clear. So I also indeed hope that that we can continue with this one.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, without so that we can actually move faster forward instead of blocking everything. Yeah. Good. So that was that. An immense thank you to the reviewers, thinking about Nuno, Arthur, Ruben de Dekker, Ranko, of course. That helped a lot preparing the pull request in this way. Good. So it's time to make a decision. Basically, can we merge this as a basis for solving the issues? And I think we now already have a couple of small things that still need to be fixed. I think. Pano, you're also adding still some suggested changes. Okay, a typo there. I think that or like a clarification. Yeah. Good. So I should share the right tab over here. So I see that that you added this. Great. Yeah. So we'll still process. I guess so. So option 1 already won't be possible during the call. We'll still process it after the call. But basically, so we now have a choice between 2 and 3. With 2, the conditions being the comments that still are in the pull request, and a full reject. How are we going to do this? Isabeau, Emil, looking at you, what's the best way to do the voting? Do we ask whether someone would vote 3, or how does it work in other trajectories?
By putting in the chat plus or -1, plus agreeing, minus disagreeing, or if there are multiple choice options, we provide an A, a B, and a C. You can vote by in the chat writing A, B, or C.
Okay, so it's the choices are A, B, and C, being 1, 2, and 3 on the slides over here. You should not choose. I think the consensus is that we won't choose A, and I hope that everyone now types B in the chat, right?
Could you also display the slide again so people are 100% certain they're voting for what they want? Thank you, Peter.
All right, I think that's and Alf says A, which I'm also happy with. But let's first fix the typos. Yeah. Okay, good. I think that's anonymous then, and we can move forward. Thank you. We've done some normative work. It's always time for a party. I find. Yeah, indeed. Ranko wrote really good blog posts on introducing tree and LDES. It would indeed be interesting to see whether we could use some text for the introduction there. I think Julian or Ranko, you can link it in the chat, I guess. These things. I think Julian was still reviewing the pull request on the LDES blog or the good. But open issues we want to solve today, I think we can scratch now this first part, the consumer-oriented rewrite of the spec. We have a new stable basis to know, we have a new basis at least to make sure that we can progress this. Which the pull request also included a little bit clarification on timestamp path, at least clarification. It was always already defined as something that decides the order in that sense, so that you can never publish something that with an earlier timestamp than the latest thing that has been published, so that you can know that it increments. And I will need to let my cat outside of my room. One moment, apologies. The benefit of working from home for these kind of things, and also the downside, I guess, but good. Okay, so the timestamp path, it was always used or for that kind of thing, but there were some long-standing issues that were never 100% tackled, and also the vocabulary contained something that was conflicting with that definition, so people were rightfully confused in that sense. And there were actually several issues that are very much related to the fact that the timestamp path, what does it mean, and can you set a timestamp path and then even do out of order things? Well, it's certainly impossible, and this is something that we know at least have clearly in the spec. Today we are mainly going to work on context information, and we're not going to work on the client's algorithm. That's going to be for next week, of course. But it's mainly that context information that I find interesting to discuss. There is wait, why did I have this example again? So this is now the example of an LDES event source, meaning that this event source can be is documented on the current page. It has a retention policy where we say that we keep the members for 1 year, and we include different members here. So we have something that was born on the 21st of December 2024, and then a second thing that was created a little bit later, basically. So an event source can be just this one page, and it will work. But of course, we will also need to fragment it somehow. What we actually will need to do in order to progress now on the issues that are still open, well, we actually need to understand how the client will work, which is already a forward to workshop 2, a preparation, you could say, as well to workshop 2, because these slides are going to be the basis for the text of this of the pull request for next time. But as well, we are going to need to do some preparatory work, or maybe also understand how the client works, to then be able to add some new features in the spec, new vocabulary terms, but also new ways of adding context information to it. So how will a client now do this process this one-page LDES? So if you put this on a page, it's actually a valid linked data event stream in that sense. How will it process it? Well, it will just, based on the caching headers and a client configurable polling interval, it will keep polling the page, and each time it will keep the states of the members that were emitted previously. So there will be a state object here, in which it says that for the root node over here, I've got subject 1 version 1, and I've also got subject 2 version 1 over here. So this state object is something that we're going to to clarify more in the spec. At this moment, we just say state needs to be kept. Now, so this could be the one-page LDES, but in time you might get a lot of things. And okay, one way of dealing with that is just putting a retention policy on it. But even a retention policy might not be sufficient, or maybe you do want to keep the full history of everything, and then you're going to need to paginate somehow. And when you paginate, you will create something like a search tree, of course, well, because it's what we suggest, of course, in LDES to do. And there will also be certain pages that the client can be certain that they will be immutable. For example, from this root node, I can try to fetch everything in 2023, and I can be certain that in 2023, of course, or the server knows, look, it's this is going to be immutable. Once I fetch this, I will never have to visit it again. So once it is going over this root node, and imagine that I start on the 21st of December 2024. Just a fun fact, it's the birth date of Julian's kit and my kit. So we both had a kit on the same day. So that's why, as a gimmick, I used that date. So if you start on this date to replicate the data set, you might first encounter the page 2023. It's one page over here, and you will add it to the visited nodes. However, you will also have to say that you will need to refetch certain nodes. The root, these contain apparently year pages, and somehow through a algorithm, I must understand that I will need to refetch the root node at least at 2025, the first of January. I will need to refetch this one because it's going to update and it's going to contain new data. So I need to also keep that in the state. So it starts with fetching the root node, following the 23 link. From the root node, you can indicate you've seen 23, and then you can, in 2023, you actually don't need to keep more state because the page is flagged as cache immutable. Then we move to the page 2024, but today it is the 21st of December. So basically 2024, I can, as a server, I can flag that as immutable because I have down here just the months, and okay, look, the last month has been added, so I will never change this page anymore. But I will, however, still change the December page over here. So while I go over all these pages, I can still update my state over here in this way, with indicating when I must refetch the right nodes. And I can also say that for 2024, in December, I actually encountered these members. I emitted Julian's son and my daughter. These were already emitted. So next time when I do it, for example, when I would do it in the 22nd of December, I will then have to repoll this page, which is clear from the fact that the refetch nodes over here says that I need to refetch it at this point in time. And then, of course, it might be that you just pause the LDES client. It could be, and that you then say, look, today, the 7th of May, I just now want to bring my copy of the data up to speed. So I launch the LDES client again. I say, look, I have this state, this current state. Please resume, and it will automatically see that okay, I will need to fetch this page, the December page again, because maybe there are still things added in the last 10 days of December, and I can also iterate over all of 2025. So that's kind of the idea of how the client algorithm will work. Basically iterating over a search tree and also allowing it to pause. The server will update the thing, and from the state you will be able to continue. And now comes the big discussion on the timestamp path, because already one of the first discussions, and I think in 2021 or something, was on does timestamp path point at the logical time or at the physical time that something was done. Does it point at the logical time, namely when Rosa and Nicolas were born, or does it point at when the fact that at the commit time or at the physical time, when this statement of the fact that they were born, that was added to the LDES, because these are two different things. Because you could have the fact that that statement, you could have them added at a different time than, of course, than when they were born. And the idea in LDES timestamp path is that we don't define what exactly it is. Why don't we define what exactly it is? Well, this just points at a property that the client can use to achieve certain functionality. And it should be clear from the semantics of your domain model what exactly it is that you're pointing at. So we keep that for the DC terms created, for example, or these terms modified, or the prof generated at, or the SOSA result time, or you have so many properties that actually indicate the timestamp, and it depends on the context of your domain model what exactly was meant over there. But what does LDES timestamp path then actually do? Well, the idea is that it is, of course, that it's the property that you can use if you want to understand the order of how things are added in the event stream. So the fact that nothing can be added to the event stream. Nothing can be added in the event stream before the last thing that is currently in the event stream, basically, so that we have a chronological order in that sense on that property, and that meaning that it could be both the logical time, or it could also be the physical time. I think the physical time will probably work best, but if the logical time works, there's no reason to actually introduce a physical time over there. Good. That's a lot of confusing language, I think. In my head, at least, it made sense. But the requirements that we have for the timestamp path is that that if the client is requested by the consumer to emit the members in the intended order, and the order on which they're going to appear, that they appeared in the event stream, then it can use the timestamp path. But as well, that the latest version of an entity will also be based on the timestamp path. Like if I have 5 versions, I will actually use the timestamp path to know which one was the latest version, to then understand, okay, all the rest can, for example, be removed when doing in point 3, when, for example, doing a retention policy, or when I'm processing as a consumer this and I want to have a latest state replication, then I can process it in this way. It can also, a client may also use the LDES timestamp path, and this is something I want to introduce next month. Then this May, that the client may use it to do some optimizations in the algorithm. Want to decide whether something is immutable. I have another slide about that, but also another one to prioritize certain relations when the client wants to process it in the intended order. Like over here, if the client is expected to give it in order, well, it would be great if it doesn't process everything at the same time, because then it needs to keep a lot of things in memory before it can start emitting something. But that, of course, we can first go to 2023, because that's going to contain the members that are oldest in time, so that can then be emitted first. Because indeed, as Antoine also said, you cannot rely on the or was it Nuno? Yeah, sorry, it was Nuno probably. I forgot, but that's it. You cannot rely on the order of triples in a page, of course. Good. So the prioritization there. Okay, yeah. And then, yeah, this frequently asked question: is it the logical time or is it the physical / committed time? And we say it's neither and both. Just points at the literal it can use on which the order is guaranteed to implement specific LDES consumer functionality, and you can use more properties like this. An exotic example where it is not the committed time or the physical time, for example, but still would make sense for in an LDES. It could be, for example, that you produce a historical LDES that has been published, but that replace the events of 10 years ago, or maybe that for a certain use case, replace, for example, the events of the World War I or something, and then at the same time replace it and make sure that it's available in the LDES at this time. Then it's not mandatory, or it's even not needed for the LDES clients that we have the physical or the committed time at the time it's added today to the event stream. But it's actually sufficient to just have a timestamp like the historical timestamp to work in order for LDES timestamp path to do its magic there. But a second thing is that out of order becomes possible. Yeah, becomes impossible, of course, because if you set your LDES timestamp path, then you cannot produce something that is earlier in time than the last thing that you emitted. That's true, but there's some simple fixes. Or you can just decide to say too bad, I will just publish the LDES, but I won't document the timestamp path, because that's what it's used for. Use cases for that includes a server that gets out of order arrivals, or a server that makes a part of the stream public at a later stage. You could say that in my backend I have sensor values for 100 sensors. I bring 80 of them already online today, but 20 are still flagged as confidential, so I cannot do that today. But maybe tomorrow I will be able to add them, and if I do, well, then I will also publish the history of these things in my LDES. In that sense, well, if that is your use case and that is your plan, which is, I think, quite exotic, I would call it, although Arthur might start shouting that because he has a use case like that. Well, in that case, you can simply just not set the LDES timestamp path, but you can still just publish your your LDES in that sense. Brecht has a question. If you use logical time, you will not have the opportunity to make corrections. For example, you missed some updates, indeed. So in practice, you will need to use the time of ingestion, and the publisher will also need to have a cache to make corrections. Yeah, indeed. So if you want to be able to do corrections, then indeed you must use an additional timestamp if you then also want to set the LDES timestamp path, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think in practice I will remove the timestamp path. In my case, it happens a lot. Pipelines can go off, and you miss some updates. Yeah, it's always possible. Yeah.
Arthur, do you want to intervene, or are you like, no, this is fine how I brought it?
I'm waiting for the next slide.
You're waiting for the next slide. You know already what's going to come. Yeah, okay. Because I'm happy that you say that, Brecht, because on the next slide we have some limitations noted down of this approach, which is now with the pull request that we all accepted with the B and Alf with A. Thanks. But we have some limitations there. The first one is being that multiple members can, of course, happen at the same time, and then ordering is unspecified within the same timestamp. And then, you could say, that's okay. Then it just doesn't matter in which order you process it, and that's why I also think this is okay for the spec today. But there might indeed be use cases where really strict ordering, even for things that happened on the same timestamp, is still needed, and then we will need to look at a different solution that we need to introduce. And two, we will not be able to have an LDES without a timestamp path that still documents how the versions supersede each other. So it could be that you still want to say, but this is the timestamp, even if it can happen out of order, so I cannot do the LDES timestamp path there. I still want to indicate the timestamp that can be used by a consumer to establish the latest version. It could be that at a later stage you publish an old version, but that for your consumer it will just be ignored because it's out of order and I already have a later state object that I'm processing. So this would be impossible now, or this is impossible if you would like, of course, to set the timestamp path, or it's impossible to do automatically at least. And then B, it's also you cannot have an LDES without an LDES timestamp path that uses a different property for versions that supersede each other versus a property that indicates an order in addition for example, assessing immutability of pages. So you might want to state on the one hand that there's one timestamp that says how to select the latest version, but there's another property that could also link towards assessing the immutability of pages. That you could say like, but I have another property that is the commit time, or that is really in that sense that does have the what's the word again? The committed or the physical time that I would be able to do here. So in order to circumvent these or to solve this at a later stage, because I think LDES timestamp path is already used quite a lot. What I would propose is that instead of setting LDES timestamp path, that we could use two other properties, like a sequence path that could be a literal, which is a date time, or it could also be a string, for example, version 1, version 2, version 3. Or it could also be an integer that can be used by the consumer to assess immutability of pages, so that you know that I'm now at version 5, for example, and everything over there has a relation towards something that's less than version 4. I know that everything there is going to be immutable in that sense. And another property, the version sequence path, with a similar ID over here, that would then be able to be used for assessing the latest version. So these properties would then together allow for more flexibility in how you build up your LDES basically. But I see that there are a lot of questions. Who was first? Although the hand is the hands are gone again, or not? No, Ranko was first, I think.
Yeah, not sure if I was first, so that doesn't really matter. I was actually typing it in the chat. What we used to do during our mornings was to use the LDES timestamp path as the time of ingestion, because that one was guaranteed in a sense.
Yeah.
Not entirely, because you can have multiple pipelines going towards the server, so you don't know which member comes first. You can even have them intertwined, interlinked. I mean, if you had 100 at the same time from different pipelines, all of those identification numbers would come into how do you say that? Interleaved. That was the word I was looking for. What we typically had to do in order to have this logical timestamp, for example, of a SOSA timestamp or whatever, we used those for the fragmentations, for the time-based fragmentations, so that you had a logical, chronological order of ingestion, which was guaranteed by the server to have in-order arrivals. However, you could still have a time-based fragmentation, which you could use as a client to look for the logical time, and that could be that would typically be a different property, unless it was okay that you used the time of ingest.
But that I mean that you should split those two, because those two have nothing to do with one another. The timestamp paths that we use for the ingestion time that we used could be used as a chronological order for your event source.
Yeah.
But your typical tree view, your typical time-based view would then use a different property, which was a logical property. And that way you solve that problem, really. But you make it explicit in that case. So I like the proposal, but I'm wondering if we shouldn't keep the LDES timestamp path and just put attach a definition to it, say it's the ingest timestamp, period, and then have a second one, which is the logical one. And then you also solve that problem.
And what does logical then mean? The logical is then for the version, right?
Yes, that's the version sequence path in your case. So
okay.
I wouldn't add two more. I would just reuse the timestamp path and give it a meaning, give it one meaning, because basically give it meaning one, basically in this case, because that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
But and I'm not really sure if you need to make it aliteral. If you,
but it would cater for some.
Yeah. But you're giving it two different ones. Oh, sorry. So your sequence path is really okay. So your sequence path is what I would call the logical one. Yeah. But I'm not sure why you're actually splitting them up in this case here.
I am splitting up. Yeah. Well,
why are you adding two more?
Yeah. I propose, in the interest of time, that we move this one towards an issue. So I will open up an issue, and then we can have the discussion over there, because this is a proposal that we could discuss in workshop 2. But I clearly wanted to state that indeed there are some limitations with the timestamp path as what we today added in the spec, or clarified in the spec. Because you cannot take document these things as separate things.
Okay.
Good.
Good for me.
So and let's then discuss the full design of this in more detail. The LDES event source then there is a chronological search tree that is optimized for the LDES client for an ordered full or latest state replication. So the idea is that for discovery on the LDES event source type, that there the timestamp path would be set, or maybe one of the future proposals, or maybe both of the future proposals. And then the path of the relations are primarily based on this ordering, so that we can actually do a fast replication in that sense, so that we can have a lot of things as flagged as immutable. And an extra promise of the server, which this was in a detailed idea while processing an event stream in the client algorithm. It would be useful if we can also optimize something if we know that the search tree is only going to publish each member once. So I think it would be interesting to also have this in the spec. But the full reason of why I'll also keep that for workshop 2. I'll include more over here for workshop 2, and I'll just put it for them. Because we need to standardize the algorithm of when the client can understand that something is immutable, and we also want to understand when we want to refetch a node. And also there I have at this moment a very drafty thing for which I'm going to open an issue or a proposal on the spec, is to flag when a certain node is going to expire, so that the client can, this way from the body, that the client can set its expiration date and knows when to refetch it. At this moment in the spec, it only works through the caching headers, which I think is more like a node at this moment, even in the current spec before the pull request. So it's not even a something normative that needs to be implemented. Good. So that makes sure that we discussed all these kind of things. I have some two lighter notes over here because the name graphs are now exemplified in the spec. We already said that over here. Good. And just a shout out to the tree community group. Next week we have a community group meeting in which we're going to discuss as well the member extraction algorithm. Because at this moment it contains some things that are really difficult to implement, and we want to make sure it's that it's straightforward enough to implement also for LDES clients. Then the tree member that points at an IRI and LDES is also now added in the first pull request, which is accepted, right? Which lead us to now being able to discuss the second pull request in the last 30 minutes. But I have good news. This pull request is not in an as advanced state as the first pull request, and will certainly not be able to be merged with A yet. But we introduced a couple of things. And I hope that I can, by explaining what we introduced feature-wise, that we then can at least maybe already decide on B, that we can merge it once certain conditions are met. So the first thing is transactions. The idea of transactions is that you tell a consumer that the event should only be committed once the transaction has been finalized. So this could be, for example, in the railway infrastructure data set of the European Agency for Railways. Over there, you actually are adding multiple railway segments. And of course, it doesn't make sense for a client to already, or for a consumer to make queryable while it is processing like half of the railway track, because that's it needs to immediately add the full the full track. So you need that to happen in a transaction in that sense, only to become queryable when the full track is ingested in the store. So we need a way to actually point at the fact that a transaction is set. And we will again just use our path technique over here. So this is the proposal in which we will say like, look, you can point at the transaction path. So this will define the identifier, or the literal over there, the literal or the named node over there will be the transaction identifier. That I need to check that at some member, if I find on the finalized path that it is finalized, so that means that the object will be true, and this is the default value as well. So this property doesn't necessarily need to be set. Then basically we can say yes, you can commit that. Going back to our example, for example, on a data set that is first being created and then also deleted. But what did we do? What did we do? Over here is the full example. I added the transaction path on example transaction. I also said that there's a finalized path over here, transaction ended, so that I understand that our transaction 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 over here, these things need to be handled together. And when this one passed, there's also transaction ended as true. So I can just now commit this in my triple store. This is not important for clients. I don't think clients need to do anything with it, but we need to document it for consumers. So this is really important for consumers, that they know that somewhere there is going to be a processor that will be able to handle transactions because, for example, they're going to commit it into a SPARCL store, for example, and they're only going to commit the latest version of it or something like that. So they actually need to work transaction based. Otherwise, they're going to get an inconsistent replication of it. There's a feature that we didn't have yet that we would like to get in the spec. And with it, we also thought it would be interesting to this way immediately also document which type of the member would point at a deletion, which one would point at a create, and which one would point at an update. Why this ambiguity between create and update? Because, for example, if you do a SPARCL store ingestion, then of course it's cheaper to do an insert than an insert delete, for example. And that's a use case that Julian, for example, you have that, right?
Yes, we noticed that in some triple stores it was faster to do an insert data query than to a delete insert, for example. Like, these kind of behaviors can be observed sometimes.
Yeah. And Arne, does it make sense for a server to publish an inconsistent state? Well, servers will just put out the members there, but then will contain a hint towards the consumer like, hey, you need to process these together. It still makes sense indeed for an LDES client to still just process the members without looking at the transaction, because there could be a processor that does something very simple, like just add up two numbers in the member and then republish it or something. For that, it doesn't need to be transaction aware. So it's only for when processors need to be aware of the transaction that this kind of information needs to be available to them. Consider the AS-boof activity. Okay, I didn't know that. Might be interesting indeed for looking into that for the examples. Yeah. And then Ranko, who defines the boundary of the transaction, the LDES server or the system feeding the LDES server? It could be either, I think, Ranko, depends on your setup.
Yeah, the reason why I'm asking is because you define a transaction here. You define, what the logical transaction is in a sense, but it could be, and I wasn't sure whether you meant the logical or the physical transaction, because what we used to do is when we get one message, it can contain multiple versions of an object or multiple states of an object for which we make versions out of it. And then you could say that is one transaction. It's the one message that we got. But I think you're really referring here to a logical transaction defined by the system that is feeding the LDES server, and for which we will actually have a bunch of members created that needs to be processed in the end by the consumer as one. So that was my question, whether it's the logical one or the physical one.
Perhaps I can comment on that.
Sure.
That was exactly like the case you're describing was exactly the case I was having. That the boundaries of that transaction that I needed to handle, or the logical boundaries, were given by, in my case, there's an RML process. So an RML process would be executed from a data source. It will produce a set of members that they all needed to be ingested together. Otherwise, I would end up reaching like these inconsistent states that Peter was saying. So indeed, the boundaries were given by an external process, not by the LDES server on its own.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. So it's really a logical transaction that is the result from processing an RML, or maybe processing one JSON file containing multiple objects, which then go one by one into the server, and then you put those transaction paths and etc. On it, so that you can actually still have that boundary of the whole processing. Yeah, makes sense. Okay, cool, thanks.
Good. And then Antoine, I see that you commented that you don't understand the rationale for and why can't I use an example LDES? Please take the floor.
Well, I start with the easy one. X-LDES, it feels like of the LDES spec. So if you would use something like an event stream, an event stream, or something like that, maybe that would be less confusing. That this is just what I meant. The more serious
is that
comment. Yeah, something like that with the camel case starting with well, with lowercase, and just using the convention. Yeah, something like that. Excellent.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a bit of the light one. All those properties, version, delete, path, the version, delete object, etc. So they are in the new pull request?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And are they really needed?
Yeah,
it
well,
kind of feels that you're actually embedding the semantics of the activity stream constructs that we're using anyway.
Yeah. The thing is that this is consumer behavior that we want to have, and there could be multiple ways of there could be multiple properties that actually infer this action to be taken by consumers, and we want to point at this is what we want consumers to take into account when something when we want to create something or update something or delete something, when we work version based, basically. So it could be, so activity streams create, update, and delete exists, but as well, for example, in DCAT, there's also the idea of a catalog record on which you can also put the status, and the status can be removed, for example. And that's also something that we want to be able to handle, that you don't use an activity streams based thing, but that you use something the catalog based the catalog records based ID, and that it would also work, basically, so that you would be automatically be able to infer that this is a deletion, for example.
Okay. So it feels very complex. But yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let's.
Sander, you have your hand raised?
Yes, I just wanted to comment a bit on the complexity of the construct. I think there is an echo somewhere. If a server decides to be, if you simply want build an LDES server that does a CRUD operation, support the CRUD operation, you could make an opinionated implementation that puts all the objects, I mean that have all the paths pointing to a header outside of the named graph, outside of the actual body of the member, and have a very opinionated thing, not having to worry about all of this from the outside of the LDES server. But then if you have depending on the domain, it might be useful to, if it already has the construct of create, update, delete in the data itself, if it already is an activity stream that is being offered to the LDES server, then you might just want to keep those semantics.
So the idea in LDES is to generally not standardize how the members itself should look like, but that you can just put any kind of domain that already exists in the members. And the LDES specification at this moment is mainly for making sure that a client can replicate and synchronize and then just spit out a stream. But we didn't include yet, and this was something that was that people really missed, the functionalities that are required for doing proper event sourcing. So for example, transactions, and that was lacking. And why didn't we add it in the past? Because we said, no, we are just going to focus on what the client needs. Now we said, look, we are going to focus on also what documenting the information so that processors can also work automatically. Because otherwise, you had to configure your specific processor manually to indicate, this one uses activity streams for their creates, updates, and deletes. That would actually be a manual step in the configuration. However, the provider of the LDES knows this information, so could have just put it in their metadata of their stream. We give them flexibility; they don't have to use activity streams. They can also use something else. For example, in DCAT, there's an alternative to describing the CRUD relations. So in that sense, this is our approach for a lot, always with the path queries, pointing at something in the member that can be used to reach a certain processor functionality or a client or consumer functionality. Yeah. And yes, this makes it a little bit more complex. Yeah, I agree. But there's a trade-off, I think, between giving sufficient flexibility to be able to work for any kind of domain, and of course, then closing the domain a little bit and saying like, no, you must use activity streams, otherwise you cannot work with LDES, and we didn't want to do that. Yeah.
But would it be possible to use activity stream by default? So if we like activity streams, we could still say that at least for the users of activity stream, we don't impose the use of those properties. And those properties would then be used to override the path when they wouldn't come from activity stream.
We could do that. It depends on this group, I guess. Antoine, can you open up an issue and propose to default to activity streams for these?
Yeah, I would gladly do that, but I will do this after you merge your pull request, because then it's going to be a bit void right now if someone looks at it, because I cannot make a link to wherever those new properties are.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
Thank you.
Good. Then an open issue still is how does a consumer separate the envelope from the payload? But we'll also get to that later. The last part that I wanted to get to, and I have really nice slides. These were the slides I had finished first, so I really want to show them still in these last 15 minutes. I hope I can still get through them in sufficient time so that we can still have some discussion about them. But this was the state of the retention policies today, or is the state of the retention policies today. They're quite complex, and they can be combined with which doesn't really help. So at this moment, in retention policy says you can point at one or more retention policies, and if more are provided, you need to union them. So if you combine a duration ago policy with a point-in-time retention policy, for example, you will keep everything in the union of both windows, basically. That's not an interesting thing, of course, because if you want to combine a point-in-time and a duration ago policy, I would expect actually that you only keep the duration ago policy, because that's like the interpretation that would make sense. And then the same problem happens with latest version subsets. If you also want to combine them, for example, latest version subset with a point-in-time, then you basically have way too much information. While the idea of a point-in-time retention policy was, I start replicating a feed today, and that feed today has sadly a retention policy on it that only keeps the data for 1 hour. So yeah, if I do it today, then I need to set on my system a point-in-time retention policy, because I don't have any data. I cannot harvest data earlier than this because I don't have access to it. So I will do a point-in-time retention policy there. And if you then combine it with the latest version subset, that means that you actually would have to keep versions before that. So that also doesn't make sense. At this moment, what's the functionality around retention policies that is already implemented? I think not too much. I think the servers are implemented, or some servers implement a certain retention policy, but then describe the retention policy towards the outside world. And what's the idea towards a consumer? Well, a consumer can use that to check whether you are fast enough to get a valid replication. For example, if you have a retention policy of 1 hour, and then you decide to only sync with a certain source each day, yeah, you will never be able to get a valid retention policy, valid replication, because yeah, you will miss out on 23 hours. So that won't work. That check just happens manually, right? So we just read with our eyes, we eyeball a retention policy, and we check whether we can use it. And that's also how at this moment the selecting a search tree in the discovery phase works, right? The discovery phase at this moment is manual. You check the search trees that exist on top of an LDES, and then you just feed to the LDES client one specific search tree that can be used. However, I think this algorithm is at this moment being evolved in order to automate it, and that's something that Krian and the call is also doing in the tree community group. So we are working on the discovery spec over there. So at this moment, the main purpose of this is just metadata that you can do to do a sanity check whether your setup is correct. And yeah, the problem is that the current retention policies are quite limited. We just saw these transactions. So how do we which retention policies need to respect the transaction boundaries? We also saw that in the version-based approach, you also have deletions there. Maybe you don't want to keep deletions until the end of time if you have a latest version subset. So if you say like, oh, look, my data set contains the latest version of everything. Well, if in 1999 you created a version and then immediately removed it again, well, the latest version of this thing, or the retention policy, must actually keep that deletion that happened in 1999. So we want also to be able to indicate that look, we keep the latest version subset, and I also I'm not going to keep actually the deletions until the end of time. No, I will only keep the deletions for 1 year, for example. So there's a need for like composite retention policies. And the use case I also just said was log compaction, something that is used a lot in Kafka, that is really well documented over here. And it's actually from that I took some inspiration and decided to say like, okay, there's no way that if we want to reach these use cases that we're going to be able to work with the design of the current retention policies. We will need to start from scratch, and this is what I propose. So when you don't describe a retention policy like this, just an event stream at a view, you just your view must keep all the members. It's only from the moment that you put a retention policy there, for example, over here a blank note, that from that moment, basically this means I have a view that retains or that keeps none of the members in my view at this moment. The first property I want to introduce is a starting from, which basically means that or targets the use case. I'm an archiver that archives from an LDES event source, and I started from a certain point in time. and that that EventSource has a retention policy, so of 1 hour, for example. So I just don't have access to data earlier than that. So I will indicate that my derived LDES, for example, only started from a certain moment. That's clear. A second property on a retention policy I want to introduce is a full log duration. That is the duration in which the full log is going to be maintained. And that XSD duration, well, you can do a simple calculation. T now minus the full log, and that is basically what you're going to keep. Or the promise of what you're going to keep. They can be combined. And in that sense, you could say like, okay, we need some logical components. We need to be able to tell whether it's an intersection or whether it's a union, and if it's an intersection, like in what direction and so on. However, when you combine them, there's only one interpretation that makes sense, and that's the fact that the full log is respected. Unless they overlap, then of course the starting from will be the boss here. So this is the only valid interpretation of this, and this is what I want to indicate. There's also the use case each time specified down here, or an example use case. However, the full log also needs to respect transaction boundaries. So if some entities over here were part of a transaction, they cannot also these things can also not be removed from the log. Okay, good. Yet another property over here that can be used as standalone property is the amount of versions to keep. So this only now keeps the latest version, basically. And this also includes, for example, the deletes that happened. So I said that I want support for being able to indicate that I'm not going to keep the deletes until the end of time. So I'm going to introduce this version delete duration here that indicates what the time is at which, or what to do at what time. I cannot count on the fact that these deletes are still going to be part of it. This means that if I'm going to poll my thing, that of course I need to keep my polling interval smaller than this duration. Otherwise, I'm going to miss out on entities that might get deleted. Good. And how do we know what a deletion is? Well, a deletion is defined by this version delete path and object again. And yes, Antoine, we might actually decide to default to activity streams, although I want to hear out everyone that maybe someone has like, but I always use something else, and for me that's the default. Then we need to hear out these opinions. But if everyone agrees on activity streams, then we just do activity streams. And I also didn't know about activity streams move, so I will also check that out, whether we can look or can see that as a transaction. But let's see. Yeah. You can combine now these things with a full log window as well. So you can say, I have a versioned window. I keep my versions. I keep my deletions for this long, and I also have a window in which I just keep all the events. And this basically is the full support of the Kafka log compaction, basically, that just says, look, you can have all the events over here, but from the moment that you go further in the history, you will only get you will only be able to replicate the latest state over there. And just for the sake of it, and I think there is like a use case saying I'm an event source that keeps the latest readings of a sensor for 1 year long. These kind of use cases. It could also be useful to have the version duration, so to limit the duration in which you keep that latest state. If it's not important to get a full thing. And Antoine, yes, I indeed understood that you didn't argue for just activity streams. Other things would still be possible indeed. And then the retention policy defines which members are visible in a view. When are members actually deleted? Where? How do we define that? Good question, Ranko. Well, that's actually out of the spec. So in the LDES spec, what I want to do is to just provide transparency of what the promise of the server. What the server actually does, I think that should be done by a different mechanism and by a different description, which is not part of the LDES specification. However, there are things like in ODRL, the Open Digital Rights language, there are already systems to do that say like a server must a configuration that says a server must remove certain things after 30 days, for example. I think this would, for example, be one good possible approach to really tell a server what needs to be removed at a certain point. Good. And this is just no use case at all, but just putting everything together that just says like, hey, from this moment on, what I want to actually pull, what I want to pull in the spec at this moment is I want to remove all the existing retention policies and I want to replace it by a single retention policy class, of which these are the all the terms in it at this moment. But I see that we are nearing the end of this workshop, and I want to, of course, respect everyone's time schedule. So what I will do is say, like, if you have still comments on this design, you can either comment on the pull request, but there's also the issue. The issue itself is on the retention policies. That's also where you can discuss this. So it's issue 50. This is where we are discussing about this, and where also this design has been discussed so far. There are some limitations of this proposal as well. For example, I cannot say that if I have a mixed stream, for example, I have an LDES of both the sensor descriptions and the observations, then I will not be able to say that I have a retention policy that only is on the observations and I have another retention policy on something else. So we, yeah. And yeah, a couple of other things that we can also discuss still in the issue and in the pull request on how we will tackle it exactly. Ranko, and you propose also to put it as obsolete instead of replacing it, breaking change. Well, I think it's interesting to immediately remove it as there's no client functionality at this moment that I know of that really interprets these retention policies now. And if we put something in the spec as deprecated, we still actually need to also specify how the yeah, we will also need to specify how the client needs to interact with these other retention policies. So that's why I would maybe want to keep it in the vocabulary as deprecated, but I wouldn't want to mention it anymore in this section, in the section on retention policies.
My remark was basically not only on this, but any breaking change that we create. I know it's a living standard, but as you know, we already had an implementation at Digital Flanders, which basically would mean that it's not compliant anymore in a sense. I know that we haven't had compliancy as a great and big thing, but still, I mean, we don't want to leave customers of our implementations high and dry. So we want to have some path forward. That's all I'm saying. So it's okay. I mean, we can do that, but
let's Yeah, so I propose that we ensure that indeed we can keep these people happy there, and that we then discuss how to get there, and that we will not take a decision on this pull request now in the last minute. Also, people starting to drop already, rightfully. So I propose that we further discuss in this pull request, and that we then do that as the first task in workshop 2. That we start discussing the final details of this pull request.
Sure. As an additional remark, it's not only for the code itself, but also documentation that we wrote. Huh? For example, in the blog posts, need to rewrite parts of it, and we'll have to rewrite some other documentation as well, just to not refer to those anymore, because otherwise they're going to be kind of strange for people.
That's a good remark, Ranko. Yeah. Okay, good. I just for the last minute, maybe I just give the floor to Isabeau still.
Yeah, just a repetition of the upcoming. So the working group, this is the 12th of June, and then a bit sooner, well, in 2 weeks' time, we have the LDES community workshop. So you can register on the link that will be shared in the chat. Next slide, we have just a sneak peek on the specific topics that we will handle on the community workshop. So British Oceanographic Data Center will be there, chatbot on mobility data, base registry of address data, and exchange of industrial emission data are just a few of the topics that will be handled there. So thanks a lot for being here. If you want to register, here are the links in the chat, and see you in a few weeks.
Thank you all.
Thanks all. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.